Well, this past week was a crazy news week for a company that had been silent for so long. We got a ton of news and updates on Iconic Arcade from not just me, but a bunch of other creators. So what I wanted to do today was to kind of give you guys a little bit of a summary of everything we learned about Iconic Arcade this past week, all the updates, plus I might even have some new information. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. It's Michael B, and I've got a ton of stuff to cover on the upcoming Iconic Arcade Street Fighter XXL unit and Street Fighter Alpha units that are supposed to be out in October. There were a ton of questions about these, and this past week, the silence finally broke from Iconic Arcade. We got a ton of information, so I kind of want to cover everything for you today, everything that I already told you, everything that other people have already brought up, as well as possibly some new information. But before we get into that, I want to say thank you so much, everybody, for checking out the video, guys. I always appreciate the support. If this is your first time to the channel, you like what you see, go ahead, subscribe, click the bell for notification, all that YouTube jazz. So like I said, it's been a very busy week for information regarding Iconic Arcade, with them finally breaking their silence and giving us some of the answers we've been looking for about their upcoming Street Fighter 2 and Street Fighter 2 Alpha cabinets that we're going to be seeing in the relatively near future. Of course, I kicked it off first this week with information. Finally, we got a look at what the UI is going to look like on the device. We also got some news about some mystery included unlockable games. So that was what I brought to the table first this week. So that was followed up with 19K Fox, who provided substantially more information than I did on the cabinet. 19K Fox filled us in on the fact that the cabinet was actually going to be a lot wider than we originally thought. In his video, he did describe that as being to accommodate two players on the control panel and give that authentic arcade feel. However, the next thing he went into was talking about the monitor size, and it did look like we were going to be getting a different monitor. Originally, it was supposed to be a 19-inch BOE monitor. This monitor is actually going to have a 19.5-inch screen, and that's accommodated by a 24-inch LCD monitor that's 16 by 9 that's going to be partially covered up by the bezel. Now, if you do the math on that, in order for them to have a 24-inch monitor, they're going to have to make sure the cabinet can accommodate 24 inches. So while it's very nice to speak about making the control panel as comfortable as possible, it also ties in with accommodating that the cabinet has to be wide enough to actually handle the new monitor. Now, the big thing about a 16 by 9 monitor, this is absolutely horrible if it's going to be on the front of the screen, but they did the smart thing like Quarter Arcades did, is they're only going to be showing a 4x3 playable area, with the rest of the 16 by 9 monitor being covered up by a bezel. And as long as there's no light bleed or they don't mess up the sizing on the games where some of it is under the bezel, this could actually be a really good thing. Now, Fox finished up by going back and talking about the control panel itself, and he did have some new information on the button placement, showing how the new Iconic Arcade HS1 button placement and control panel would be more in line with the original HS1 arcade control panel to give it that authentic feel. Now from there, my buddy James Hates Everything did a live stream last night, a very long live stream where he kind of covered everything that was already discussed that we knew about the Iconic cabinets, but James did have some new information that was extremely interesting and really adds to the intrigue with what Iconic is doing. So first up was the very disappointing news that the Iconic Arcade wasn't going to be simple to add games to. Now, when we originally got the announcement from Iconic Arcade, it was kind of left to the imagination that they were going to be using a Pi-Fi and we were going to be able to updated the SD card or add an SD card and load our own games. This was basically going to be a multicade. That isn't the case, unfortunately, which I know it's not something Iconic necessarily promised, but it's also something they didn't correct people on either. So people that bought into this thinking they were buying a branded multicade, Well, I got some other news for you. However, there is good news in that front. There are, of course, like I mentioned, lock games on the cabinet and mystery games. Those games will come free to consumers. Once they unlock them, they're going to have all the same features as the other game, online play, yada, 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 all that stuff, leaderboards, everything else. So then he gave us a little bit of information about future Capcom cabinets, and it was really exciting stuff. So we found out that they might do in the future like an Alien versus Predator Big Blue, a Final Fight cab, which I absolutely love. I miss my arcade 1-up Final Fight cab, so I would love to see an XL version of that. The new Capcom cabs will have all new games, and you will be able to get the previously included Capcom games for those cabinets as well. They also talked about opening up a storefront where you could buy games off the included storefront. It won't be available originally, but it will be coming down in the future. So that is pretty rad itself. Now we also got a little bit of an update on the artwork for the Street Fighter 2 Alpha Cab, especially on the control panel. So this has changed since the original cabinet came out. While most people are going to look at this and be disappointed, the idea behind this is to make this closer to the artwork that was included on the original Street Fighter 2 Alpha cabinet. So that's why the change was made. You might not think it looks as good as what we've seen in the past, but it is technically arcade accurate, so keep that in mind. So then after that, the Cornercade also had a stream, including Paul Multicade Mindeman on there to talk about everything that was going on with Iconic. He also had some really interesting information on his stream as well regarding upcoming releases. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the fact that during that stream, they did talk about the future of Iconic Arcade and what they were hoping to do. And one of the things they went back to was, of course, the appearance of a Double Dragon cab that we saw late last year for the whole Technos, or I forget what it is, Arc System Works Fighting Championship that they did a prototype for. Now, you guys all may remember this video from B-Kong. Bobby Vu was there. They showed off this beautiful Double Dragon cabinet, and we were all kind of hoping this wasn't one and done. Well, what we've been hearing now is this wasn't one and done, and this could potentially, and more than likely is potentially going to be the next release from Iconic Arcade. Going back to James' video, another important feature to note is if you take a look at the width on this cabinet and what they're displaying, this is in fact the 24-inch Lenovo monitor that's going to be included in the new Street Fighter 2 Iconic Arcade model that is going to be coming out. So if you're concerned about the switch from 4x3 19-inch BOE to the new Lenovo monitor, you can take a look at the quality of these monitors in these prototype units because it's going to be the same one. I know people are saying that this monitor is going to be crisp, sharp. Again, my biggest concern with any kind of monitor change away from what we know from BOE is how is the light and coloring going to be, because we saw those monitor changes with Arcade 1-Up and the monitor got extremely washed out from angles. But looking at this, I don't notice the same problem. So I'm pretty positive that the 19.5 4x3 inch picture is going to look very good. I'm also super excited about the concept that this beautiful Double Dragon cabinet could be coming home. I've mentioned it a million times. One of my buddies had one of these in his basement growing up, and it's just such a nostalgic cabinet for me. This is one I absolutely have to have. So as the show went on, we also learned about the future of Iconic Arcade and what the message was delivered through Cornercade and Multicade Paul was the fact that Iconic is looking to do more powerful games. So think more modern, which is not a huge surprise to me because this has always been John D's modus operandi. Even back when he was with Arcade 1-Up, he was always trying to push the envelope, bring games like Marvel vs. Capcom 2, NFL Blitz to these home arcades with mixed results. Now, of course, with the power of the Raspberry Pi 5, they can actually do more powerful games, more 90s games. Now, me personally, that's not exactly music to my ears. You guys know where my heart and soul rests. I want to see more classic 80s game get their time in the sun. but that doesn't seem to be something we can necessarily expect from Iconic Arcade. I wouldn't rule it out, but don't necessarily expect to see Q*bert coming from Iconic Arcade. John D hates Q*bert, so we probably won't see it. But they did talk about if Sega is going to be coming back to the home arcade scene. They kind of gave it to Media One Up as being the company that can make that possible. I don't really know about that. What can make that possible is money. Sega wants money. Sega got paid big by iArcade, so that's where it's going to go. But the reason that was brought up is that Star Wars Trilogy, a title that the home arcade community have wanted for a number of years, is in fact possible thanks to the Pi 5. And then if Iconic can in fact get the licensing, then Iconic will release a Star Wars Trilogy arcade. We'll see. I mean, I don't really give a shit. Give me Robotron, give me Q*bert, give me a lot of 80s stuff. That's kind of what I want my arcade for. Anyways, moving on from there, they did talk about possible future licenses like Point Break as a shooter. They talked about, House of the Dead. They talked about Tekken. So, all those bullshit jokes I was making about a Tekken XL weren't accurate. It looks like it might be a Tekken XXL. And, John D likes fighters, so expect to see more of that along the lines. Now, they also covered pre-orders coming up in the near future. And like I had mentioned in my video, there was rumors about a potential Amazon pre-order closer to the actual delivery date. However, it looks like that's not going to be the only place pre-orders are. The main place where you can expect to see pre-orders show back up is going to be on the VMI website with, I don't know what the right term is here, but with the precaution that no guarantees regarding what the price is going to be, if they're going to be able to hold that initial $6.99 price point, $9.99 for Canadians, or whether or not they're going to be able to offer free shipping, especially for us here in Canada. Now, a quick update on that. I did talk to Spreetail, and I did find out that their goal is to, in fact, actually offer the exact same price as the pre-order or as close as they can do it. That's what they're trying to do. So they're going to aim to offer the pre-order price. However, they do need to do a final tally on what the machine costs are, the shipping and freight costs, all that stuff, before they can give us that pricing. So fingers crossed. I really don't want to pay more for this, and I'm kicking myself for missing the initial pre-order, but hopefully they can get there. The other thing is they're still hoping, especially for us Canucks, that we're going to be able to get free shipping if we order directly from VMI, so stay tuned for that one. Now, shooting back to some information James gave us, they did talk about the controls. The controls are in fact going to be high quality Samwa clones. So if you're looking for an example of that, they're going to be the same quality as what's in the AtGames Legends Ultimate, which really is what I've been saying all along. We don't necessarily need, commercial grade buttons in these cabinets. You can just do better buttons, Arcade 1-Up and other companies, and it looks like, Iconic Arcade have heard that, and they are using the same Samwa quality buttons that are in the AtGames Legends Ultimate, which I'm sure most of us in the home arcade community are going to be totally fine with. Now, the other thing that was mentioned in James's video that I do want to touch on was they talked about why the delays happened. So the piece that James put out there was it was all about components and parts, having to switch things around. And while I think that's partially true because of the tariffs and stuff like that, I think that's mostly kind of a bullshit response. We all know why this happened. Like, obviously, Cornercade mentioned this a couple weeks ago. He pretty much confirmed that, there might have been some kind of issue with the design, some kind of issue with the rumored cease and desist. So, I mean, while it's fine to hear those words about components and parts orders, there was something else going on there. And especially considering the cabinet is, in fact, getting some considerable changes, you have to take both of those things into consideration. Now, if you guys are looking for a very concise and detailed listing that you can read yourself instead of my rambling nonsense here in this video, I will share a link in the description below. I'm going to share a link to all the videos as well, so you can go back and catch up if you're so inclined. But if you head over to the Iconic Arcade Gaming Reddit page, there's a post there from NeoHyper64 who covers pretty much everything that was covered this past week outside the new information I covered today. But, it's a good, concise listing of everything you want to know about the news that broke regarding Iconic Arcade this past week. So anyways, guys, now I just want to share my final thoughts on all this news regarding Iconic Arcade. I think the first thing that's a positive, we're finally hearing something. The fact that there is news, the fact that they are moving forward with things like the art survey, with, releasing this information about changes to the cabinet, telling us about potential pre-orders and future games lists is all positive information that shows that the project is moving in the right direction. Now, for people who pre-ordered the cab off the initial information, I understand that this week's news may have given you a couple more concerns, one of which is the fact that the cabinet is going to be wider than we originally thought. Now, to me, I think that's a positive. Of course, you get a more comfortable control space where two people, based on the dimensions, can actually play together like on a real arcade. That's good. But for some people with space concerns, where they're going to fit this, that might be an issue for some people. Then moving on from there, I did want to talk about the fact that the screen is in fact changed. When you initially opted into buying this from the pre-order, we were told this was going to be a 19-inch BOE monitor. Where we know how that performs, what kind of quality you're going to get, we're moving to a new monitor, which they are praising as being higher quality, and it might be everything they're saying it is, but it's still an unknown quality. Now it is going to be a 16:9 with a bezel covering it up. Thankfully, we do have some footage and data, thanks to the Double Dragon prototype, for us to look at for that. Then last but not least, probably the most disappointing news is the fact that this isn't going to be something that we can use as a mass multicade, where the Pi 5 is going to be locked down. That's a bummer for a lot of people that bought it under the assumption that they were just going to be able to add their own games. Now, Iconic Arcade definitely didn't advertise that, didn't sell that point to us, but they also didn't deny it either. They kind of went along with it. So the fact that that's now being changed will be a bummer for some people, but they have offset that by including mystery games and talking about an upcoming storefront to add games, which I think is a reasonable trade-off. Anyways, guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Are you excited about the new Iconic Arcade news we got this past week? If you're a pre-order holder, are you still happy with your pre-order? If you held out or canceled your pre-order, are you happy to hear the news about pre-orders opening back up? And will you jump on board when they become available? Anyways, guys, thank you so very much for watching. This is Michael B. the Game Genie. I'll talk to you next time.